Well, I guess it's kind of fitting that on what might be the gloomiest Monday for Pittsburgh football in a long time, and I mean the city of Pittsburgh, we're going to have just absolutely gorgeous weather. I mean, you can make the joke that the sun is still coming up today. I mean, the sun is going to be out. It's going to be 80. It's going to be a beautiful day in Pittsburgh. Unless you like football, because then it just sucks. Welcome to the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's Monday. We're starting a new week. We're starting a new month. It's October. Welcome to October, folks. Welcome to the new week here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You know the website by now, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, where we have all the content. We have all the coverage of Pitt football, basketball, and recruiting. But of course, what we also have is message boards where Pitt fans all day, every day can interact and talk about what's going on in the world of Pitt sports. And you can believe that the message boards have been on fire for the last few days, just like they have been for the last few weeks and really for the last month or so. September was a big pile of trash for the most part. And the message boards have reflected that. Not that the message boards are a pile of trash, but that the message boards have been very lively with people talking about the bad football they've been watching for the last 4 weeks. So if you're a Pitt fan and you want someone to complain to, you can't always text other people, or you're always going to be around other people to talk to about Pitt and talk about how bad it is and complain about it. You can always go to the message boards and hang out with other Pitt fans all day, every day at Panther-Lair.com. And of course, the YouTube channel here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's a place where you can get all of our Pitt video content, these daily morning Pitt videos, which you may not like thinking too much about Pitt, but you still appreciate a little bit of Pitt sports talk. And look, you and I watched the Steeler game yesterday. You know what everybody's going to be talking about on Sports Talk Radio today, and it's not going to be Pitt, Virginia Tech. So even though you may not want to hear a lot of Pitt talk, you know you're not going to get hardly any of it. And so that's what we're here for. We give you 20 minutes every morning of Pitt sports talk here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So you should like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You don't want to miss any of the Morning Pitt videos or any of our press conference videos, interview videos, our weekly live show on Wednesday nights at 8:30 p.m. Me and Jim Hammett hang out for an hour talking Pitt sports. You can join us there. And then, of course, the live post-game show. We've had some late ones with all these 8 o'clock games, and we certainly have, stayed up late. And a lot of people have stayed up with us. We had a lot of fun. I can't say the post-game show for the Virginia Tech game was a lot of fun, but it did happen, and we all sort of commiserated for an hour or 75 minutes or so talking about Pitt sports. So you don't want to miss any of that stuff. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then, of course, I got to tell you about home field. And if you're a Pitt fan, you may not feel good about Pitt, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't look good. Go check out homefieldapparel.com for some of the best and sweetest Pitt gear you are going to find. High-quality shirts, super soft, hold their shape, they fit really well. And they've got some of the best designs and graphics that you're going to find on Pitt gear at homefieldapparel.com. And they've got like 150 schools. So if you're really swearing off Pitt for a while, you can find some sweet shirts and sweatshirts and joggers and dad hats and bomber jackets for a bunch of other schools. You can adopt, whoever you want. You want to adopt James Madison? Well, I don't know if they have James Madison, but if you want to adopt another school, at least for a little while, you can get some sweet gear at homefieldapparel.com. And here's the best part. If it's your first order, you can use the promo code LAIR23, LAIR23, and get 15% off your first order. So you get some of the best Pitt gear or any school gear that you're going to find, and you get it for 15% off on your first order. Remember, that promo code is LAIR23, LAIR23. homefieldapparel.com. Go check it out, homefieldapparel.com. So what do we say on the Monday after Virginia Tech? The day after Virginia Tech. We've been doing these day after Morning Pits all season. The Monday after the game, we find some things to talk about, sort of what we think after cooler heads have prevailed for the past 24, 48 hours, somewhere around there. And we're in sort of a funny spot now because I don't think there are a lot of cooler heads that are prevailing at this point. I think all the things that you were thinking and feeling after the game on Saturday night probably haven't lessened, probably haven't gone away. There's probably no, perspective you've gained over the last 2 days. I imagine if you were rip-roaring mad on Saturday night, you're only slightly less so this morning, and it might be because you just woke up and just had some coffee and you feel good and you haven't, had any beers, and it's not directly after the game. But I can't imagine that you've added much perspective on your overall thoughts of the current state of the team and the current state of the program. And I'm the kind of guy, particularly when it comes, probably with most things in life, and at times this is a character flaw, and certainly I think it applies to how I approach sports. I typically try to avoid knee-jerk reactions, overreacting to a situation. I try to keep a little bit of perspective and try to stay rational about things and not make a rash decision. It's odd that rash is not a shortened form of rational, even though you got kind of that, just as I said it, I was like, rash sounds a lot like rational, but they're very different things. I try to avoid making those rash decisions, those knee-jerk overreactions. I really do. And I mean, sometimes I think that's a flaw. There's times where you have to make a decision quickly and act promptly. My fantasy football teams perennially suffer because I sit with the same crappy players all the time. And I'm just, well, it's going to pay off. It's going to pay off. It's going to pay off. And it doesn't pay off, and I wait too long, and I finally make a move, and it's too late. I need to act more quickly. So it's not always a good personality trait to sort of sit on things like that, to wait and not overreact, and intentionally not overreact. But in this particular situation, as we sit here with Pitt entering a bye week, a full week off to sort of reconsider what has happened, and figure out what has gone wrong, and perhaps most importantly, try to solve the question of what can go right over the next 7 games, how they can break a 4-game losing streak, how they can salvage whatever they can out of these 7 games, whatever wins they can piece together. And I'm really, as I sit here thinking, I'm not sure any reaction will be classified as an overreaction. I don't think there's a rash decision to be made here. Among the various decisions facing Panthers and his coaching staff as Pitt heads, into the second half of the season, or approaches the second half of the season, I'm not sure there's anything that would really count as a knee-jerk overreaction or a rash decision in response to what the team has done for the past 4 games. I really don't. I am open for trying anything. And Panthers should be too. I would think that he is. Now, if you listen to these videos, you watch these videos, you listen to these podcasts, you read things I read on Panther-Lair.com, I mean, I think that I always talk about with personnel, coaches are never just going to throw guys out there to see what they can do. They're not going to just, let's see, let's try the young guy, let's see how he plays. They're not going to do that. They're going to go with the players they believe give them the best chance to win. But at this point, when you're 1-4, when you're in a 4-game losing streak, when you look like you are playing as bad of football as you have played in years, decade even, maybe more, brother, all bets are off. Because honestly, and again, here's another thing I always kind of argue against. I never want to say, well, it could never get worse. Things could never get worse. Things could always get worse. I don't really know if things could get worse than they are right now. I mean, like, what is worse than where they're at right now? What rock bottom is lower than the current state of this program? In a 4-game losing streak, 0-4 against FBS opponents, their only win this season coming against an FCS team, they're getting run off the field, embarrassed by an arch rival on the road, embarrassed by a team that, came into the game with the same crappy 1-3 record that Pitt had. Came into a game on Saturday night against Virginia Tech with an opportunity to not necessarily put themselves at the top of the ACC, but at least to separate themselves from the bottom a little bit. You beat Virginia Tech on the road, and you've at least created a little separation between you and Virginia, or you and Virginia Tech, you and Boston College. You've created at least you and Georgia Tech. You could create a little bit of separation. But instead, the opposite happens. And now, you lose to that team, and instead of creating, you created separation, just not the kind of separation you wanted. You went from being, pushing yourself ahead, or potentially pushing yourself ahead of teams like Virginia Tech, to now firmly planting yourself behind them, to where, anybody doing their power rankings of the ACC right now has you either 13th or 14th, and rightfully so. You don't look like you belong higher than 13th or 14th. I think I saw David Hale or somebody from ESPN had their rankings, and it was, I think they had Pitt 14th behind Virginia. Virginia's 0-5. Virginia's 0-5, and in this ranker's opinion, Pitt was below the Cavaliers. Now, Virginia hasn't played an FCS opponent yet. They get William & Mary this weekend. So you would think they'll be able to get their first win, and they'll be 1-5 and probably stay ahead of Pitt because they've had just about the same amount of success against FBS opponents as Pitt has had this season, which is to say they have had none. Virginia was in the same kind of game. They went to Boston College in a game to see who could climb out of the cellar at least a little bit. And they also lost, like Pitt did. And now they're the bottom two teams. Imagine being so bad that you're ranked behind a winless team after 5 games. So to me, all bets are off, and nothing should be off the table. Everything should be available to this staff, and this staff should be willing to do pretty much anything. Change personnel, change staff, change responsibilities and assignments and duty, change it all. And when I say that, I mean there's a certain reality here. The reality is we're talking about the offense. We're talking about changing as much as you possibly can, tweaking as much as you can, adjusting as much as you can on the offensive side of the ball. I know Saturday night was not the defense's proudest moment. As a matter of fact, it was probably one of their more embarrassing moments. They got run on at will. They had no way to stop Tootin or Drones. The perimeter runs were just carving them up. They made a bad offense look good. I said after the game, they made Kyron Drones look like he was, Cam Newton or somebody. And maybe he is. I'm pretty sure he's not, but he definitely looked like it on Saturday night. And so I think it was an embarrassing moment for that defense. I still am holding on to the thought that this defense will get better as the season goes on. I'm still holding on to the thought that you were replacing 6 starters, 6 big-time contributors, particularly up the middle in Kalijah Cansey, Servassier Dennis, Brandon Hill, Eric Hallett. I'm still of the mind that, if you recruit like Pitt, which is how a lot of schools recruit, it's hard for you to, just reload like that as opposed to rebuild. And I think it's more of a rebuild than we thought it was going to be at the beginning of the season, probably more of a rebuild than the coaches thought it was going to be. But I think that side of the ball will keep getting better. Those guys will get more experience. They'll see the field more and they'll improve. I'm not sure what the options are on offense. And offense is where the biggest concern is. Offense is where they've scored 7 touchdowns in 4 games against FBS opponents. Offense is where they have not had a 400-yard game in who knows how long. Offense is where they can't run the ball and they can't throw the ball and they're bad on third down and they can't pass protect and they're not really very good at run blocking and the receivers don't really catch a run route. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I'm starting to pile on at this point, but Kanate Mumfield has been pretty good. Gavin Bartholomew is obviously a very good player. Quarterback, O-line, run game, pass protection. I mean, like the laundry list of issues facing this offense, it's a long one. And I don't even know how much you can fix. I don't know how much you can correct in the amount of time that they've got here before their next game. I don't know how much you can do in 2 weeks, but nothing should be off the table. And we heard something similar out of both head coaches in Pittsburgh over the weekend. We heard Pat Narduzzi and Mike Tomlin both talk about, things have to be reevaluated. Changes are going to have to be made. You can't keep doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. Well, let's see it from both guys. I mean, this isn't a Steelers podcast, and we're not going to talk about the Steelers, but let's see it. You both talked and let's just focus on Narduzzi. You talked a good game coming out of the Virginia Tech game. Talked about we're going to have to reevaluate everything. Okay, we'll reevaluate it and fix it, or find some different solutions, or find some different options. Because if you reevaluate it and say, you know what, actually what we're doing is probably the best that we're going to get, then you've really screwed this up. I mean, really screwed it up. From top to bottom, whether it's coaching or player, evaluation and development, it is screwed up If you really look at this situation and say, that's the best we're going to be able to do. Because that's not going to win you many games. It might not win you any games if you keep playing like that on offense. And whether that means changing the quarterback, okay, if you were going to make a list of what could happen and what should happen and what needs to happen, I mean, I think the quarterback is the first thing that you're going to point at. I think the quarterback is the first thing you're going to look at, the first position you're going to consider, and you try to decide, is this the guy? Is Phil Dracovic the guy going forward? He hasn't looked like the guy. The best you can say is that he went 11 of 15 in the first half against North Carolina for 109 yards, averaged less than 10 yards per completion in the first half against North Carolina. That's the best you can say for him. He threw 3 touchdown passes against Cincinnati. The list of praise and praiseworthy accomplishments is very short. And in this game at Virginia Tech, he completed 11 passes, 6 of which came on the final drive. Talked about this a lot after the game on Saturday night. You have 5 completions through almost 54 minutes of game time. 5 completions. And there were some very long completions in there. 75-yard touchdown pass, 61-yard touchdown pass, a couple of 20-yard passes. Like, great. Do it all in like a quarter. Complete 5 passes in a quarter. Not 3 quarters and change. It's just hard to imagine that this is the best they can do. Whether it's the quarterback, the offensive scheme, the play calling, the play design, the game planning, all of those things that go into it, it's hard to imagine that this is the best they can do. The offensive line with the pass protection, it has not been very good. Phil Dragovic's been under pressure a lot. I think he showed it late in the game. They talked about it on the game broadcast that he was bailing out of clean pockets and that he could have hung in there a little bit better, ran himself into a sack or two, or ran himself into a pressure because he escaped against a clean pocket because he felt the pressure that wasn't actually there. And so that has made life difficult for Phil Dracovic. But when he has had time and when he has thrown passes, they have not been good, as evidenced by 5 completions in the first 54 minutes of the game. Can the offensive line improve? Yeah, I think it can. Do they have their best line out there now? No, I think Jake Cradle is probably part of their best offensive line. When Cradle returns, assuming he returns at some point, ideally in 2 weeks, where does he go back in? Does he step in for Terrence Moore at center, replace Moore at center, or does he step back in at right guard where he's played extensively in the past and where he could potentially shore up what has been one of their weaker positions because Jason Collier just hasn't played well? That's going to be a decision that Dave Borbely is going to have to make. Probably Frank Cignetti, Panthers to some extent. My thought is keep Moore at center, build for the future to some extent, let him grow into that role, let him continue to progress and develop, and get Jake Cradle out at right guard. And then you probably will have your 5 best available offensive linemen. Matt Gonsalves and Ryan Jacoby would be 2 of their 5 best, but neither one of those guys is available. So you have to do the best you can. And then it comes back to what we talked about a lot last week of identifying the playmakers, prioritizing the playmakers, and getting the ball to the playmakers. Rodney Hammond is one of those playmakers. He was getting the ball a lot, and then I can only assume he got hurt. I don't know why he came out of the game after like 1 carry in the second half. Gavin Bartholomew. Throw this guy the football. Throw him the football. He had like 3 targets. And 2 of them were on the final 2 offensive plays of the game. Checkdowns on 3rd and long and 4th and long. And not just 3rd and long, 3rd and 31. And that's when you throw to Gavin Bartholomew for a checkdown pass that gets 11 yards. 4th and 20, you throw to him again on a checkdown pass that gets 10 yards. This is a guy who can probably help your offense move down the field. This is a guy who can probably help you score, it might be a dirty word, but touchdowns. And he can't get a look until the final 2 plays on offense. He has 1 target before that. There's no explaining it. And look, I'm not going to say that's on Frank Cignetti. He hasn't thrown a single pass all year. But you can design the offense to get the ball to your playmakers. And if that goes against your pro style 4-read, go through your progressions offense, if it becomes down to God forbid, a one-word offense, then do it. If you need to cut the field in half, do it. If you need to isolate and identify and be like, okay, this ball, when it is snapped, is going to 86, and if it's not their run, then do it. If you're going to stick with Phil Dracovic, you might as well use some of the talents he has, which are running, which is getting out and moving around, extending the pocket. Put him on the run. Roll him out. Have him go little sprint outs or something. Have more quarterback runs in there. Have him understand that it's one read and go. That if that read is not there, that if he doesn't have Bartholomew, or he doesn't have Mumfield, or he doesn't have Kenny Johnson, and it's those three guys, particularly as long as Bub Means is out, but really it's just those three guys. If he doesn't have them, run. 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 It's what he can do. It's what he does relatively well. Might as well have him do it. Simplify this thing as much as you have to and as much as you can. I don't want to say dumb it down, but dumb it down. One read and go. One read and go. Add a little bit of speed to this offense. Add a little bit of urgency to this offense. Add a little bit of tempo to this offense. One read and go. No more second, third, fourth reads. One read and go. Because you can't run the ball. You can't run the ball when they have 9 guys in the box, and they're going to put 9 guys in the box because you can't throw the ball. So if you're not going to be able to throw the ball, then you're really not going to be able to run. Because you really make it easy for Virginia Tech when you can't throw the ball. Or you make it easy for all of these opponents when you can't throw the ball, because it's not even like they're stopping your pass game. You just can't do it. And so they're looking at it and they're like, well, they can't throw. So we're just going to load up to stop the run because we don't have to worry about anything else. West Virginia didn't have to worry about anything else. North Carolina didn't have to worry about anything else. Cincinnati didn't have to worry about anything else. Virginia Tech didn't have to worry about anything else. So it was very easy to stop Pitt's running game when there was no threat through the air. So that's what we're thinking on the day after Virginia Tech, and it's all things that we've been thinking about all weekend, right? I think you've been thinking those things too. Now we have 2 weeks of these shows to talk about. We'll branch off into other topics. We'll get into recruiting. We'll talk hoops. We'll find some different things to talk about as we move through this week and next week. While Pitt takes a week off, the coaches will be out on the road recruiting. They'll be being active like that, but they're going to have to answer a lot of questions that they need to be asking themselves. And we'll see what answers they come up with, I guess, in 2 weeks. But we'll keep talking here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We'll have a Morning Pitt video every day of the week for you. And then the live shows Wednesday night. And then the post-game show will be back in 2 weeks for that. So like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And then go to homefieldapparel.com for some sweet Pitt gear. You can feel sad about Pitt, but you don't have to look bad. You can still look great at homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code LAIR23, LAIR23, to get 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. Thanks for tuning in today. Appreciate talking to you. I hope your week starts off well. And it's going to be a beautiful week here in Pittsburgh. So enjoy the weather and then tune in tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.